first Friday of the month, so that means it's time for Eye on Terre Haute. This is where we sit down with Terre Haute Mayor Duke Bennett and discuss what's going on in the city. Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's great to be here, Abby.
Well, I think one of the big things this month has been the railroad corridor study, talking about getting those railroads out of Terre Haute or in a better way for us drivers to go around Terre Haute. Explain what this study is for us.
Yeah, you know, for years, I mean forever, people have talked about the railroads.
Yes.
And unfortunately, as a community, we've never taken on the challenge as looking at the whole thing. And there's been some small studies done periodically to look at very specific things like 19th and Margaret. How much would it cost to put an overpass in? That was the last study that was done. And they didn't look at anything else. And so we had gone to our elected representatives in D.C. and asked for some money to do a true study, and then you have to follow those procedures in order to get funding later. So we wanted to do it right. You've got to do it right up front. And so we're finally kicking that off. You know, we put a committee together back in 2008 of some local people who've been looking at kind of all of our issues just from our perspective. Well, now we're doing it with the public's involvement. And so our consultant, we had our first meeting last week, the consultant is responsible to look at all the problems in the entire county, basically, and most of it's in the city, but look at the whole county. And then we will have several public meetings where people can come and look at what we're working on, what we're doing, give their input to the process. And then hopefully by the end of the year, the consultant's report will come back to us. And basically it'll tell us, here are the projects that we think are important, will have an impact on the city, and which ones are really realistic, which ones are fundable, which ones are have the biggest, quickest impact, because it's going to turn into multiple projects over multiple years. It'll take a long time to do everything we'd like to do, but we're getting started on it. So hopefully next year then we can go and ask for the funding for the first project. That's kind of the goal here. We're going to be looking at every major crossing, every consolidation, removal of lines. I mean, it covers the whole gamut. And some of the stuff's just not realistic because of the cost, but there's a lot of things we can do to make it much, much better for the community. And
you said with this meeting, the railroads actually sat down with the city, which was the first of its time. Are the railroad companies, CSX, Indiana Railroad, are they okay with this so far?
Well, yeah, they are, but you got to keep in mind that it works just fine for them right now.
Right.
You know, it inconveniences us, but they can move freight in and out of Terre Haute with no problem, and so it works. And so anything you do has to be acceptable to them because it's their private property. I mean, it's their own.
So I wondered how on board they were.
Well, that's why you got to have them involved. You know, a lot of people are they get mad at the railroads, and I understand that, but I think working with them is better than being adversarial to them. And so we've got a representative from Indiana Railroad and one from CSX. The guy from CSX comes up from Jacksonville for our meetings every month. So they are engaged in this, and as we craft these projects, they will be things that the railroad has already said we can do that. They will have done an internal vetting of that to say, yeah, we'd be interested in that, but of course the community will have to help pay for it, and we're hoping to do that through federal funding.
And you said that'll take about a year for that study, and we have to do this study, correct?
Yeah, in order to get any federal funding to do any projects like that, you have to follow this process. So first we had to get them to give us the money to do the study. Then the second piece is, there's a lot of red tape to it, but if you follow all those rules, then it positions you for funding to do the projects.
And you're actually going to head to Washington next week to talk with some railroad people.
Yeah, I'm going to be meeting with Senator Lugar and Senator Coates and Congressman Bouchon and talk about all the things going on, and the projects we have going on in Terre Haute. But railroads specifically, I want to make sure we've got a connection with Federal Railroad. You know, they're kind of the governing body of all this, and everybody has to work with them, even the railroads. They can't do anything without Federal Railroad approving it. So I'm going to be meeting with some folks out there to kind of explain to them what our process is, what we're doing, how we're spending the money that we got from them, and to begin develop a relationship with the Federal Railroad.
And who else will you be talking with when you're out there?
Well, I'm going to be going and talking with the EPA about our long-term control plan, so we have a connection, in D.C. with the EPA, and also be going to the White House again to meet with David Agnew, who's the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. And I'd met with him a couple of years ago just to kind of talk about all the things going on in Terre Haute.
Wonderful. Well, also a big thing this month, you've decided to also run for mayor again, which you were the challenger last year, and now you're the incumbent. How's that going to be different?
Well, it's a lot different. before you can kind of sit back and you develop your strategy and you say, here's what I would do differently, or here's what you get with me. Well, most people have seen what they get now, and so when you're the incumbent, there's some advantages to that and there's some disadvantages because, it's been interesting how there's been changes of mayors quite often here, and hopefully, we've done the right kind of things that people would be interested in seeing me serve again. But I love the process. It's always good to have new candidates, because it's good to have quality candidates, especially, and I think it's healthy for the whole, community. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I love this job. I love, politics. Some people say, I can't believe you're doing it again, but, I just think that it's a good thing for our community to keep moving forward, and I'm excited about it. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and safe travels to Washington, and we'll look forward to hearing all that when you get back.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. And again, if you'd like to see this segment again or you have a segment idea of your own, go to WTHI-TV.com and click on the community page.